Hello, everyone. Let's see. Hi.
What's up? What's up?
Everybody, is we
What's
on
up?
mute?
Hi.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Stone Bible Study Interviews. I might just be a little stoned myself. how you doing, TigerShark and Jevem? So good to see
Doing
you.
great.
Doing
How's the
great.
weather
Thanks for
down there?
inviting.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. So awesome. How's the weather down south?
Oh man, it's hot. It's like 93 out right now. But we
Oh
just got
wow.
some caught some turtles this summer, so we got a big turtle tank. I was working on this morning. So got some turtles, got some snails in there so they can clean up after them, and we got it rocking over there. So
I know. How'd the cactus harvest go? I was checking that out. You were posting about that. It's pretty cool.
yeah, it went good. I mean, I cut probably a total like 42 inches, something like that. De-spined them or de-prickled them, prickers or whatever you want to call them, and then dried them. So cut the core out of them because the core is where a lot of the nausea in causing chemicals are. So cut that out, dried them, came back, and now they're in a tincture, sitting in alcohol. So 90% alcohol, but it's really good because mescaline is alcohol soluble. So I'll mess with that later. I don't know how strong it's going to be because the funny thing about cactus is they're not always the same. So you could get one really strong one and one really weak one. So I don't know what it's going to do, but yeah.
Little like mushrooms, maybe, eh? Because mushrooms are like that. You never know. I find if they're blue, they're gonna be good. That's what I find.
Yeah. Yeah,
Anyway,
it's funny because the penis envy mushroom, which is really funny because the guy, I forget his last name, but he has an interview. Somebody interviewed him about it before, but he basically created them by um, uh, cultivating the aborts. So the smaller aborts. So usually abort, like they'll start growing and they look like they're going to be a full mushroom, but they don't. They stop for whatever reason. So he just took a bunch of those and cultivated the strain that he had turned into penis envy, and he doesn't even like the trip that you get off of those at all. He doesn't like cubensis, and it has to do with what they call entourage effects. And there's literally like 6 alkaloids within the mushroom outside from psilocybin, 5-MeO DMT, that like kind of formulate how that trip is going to be. And a lot of people on shroomery and blue light, for example, over the years have also had a similar conclusion. And so they're trying these different species of mushrooms that have different entourage. So the 6 main alkaloids in different concentrations. And some of them, interestingly, are reporting that this new mushroom that they found in South Africa, at least Western science found, right? They've been using it for thousands of years. In 2024, called natalensis, psilocybe natalensis, um, that one reportedly has a bunch of people saying it's a very positive trip. And so there you have a lot of longtime mushroom users that are now walking towards that spore because they don't like the up and down sometimes of the cubensis. And I've had those. I'm sure we
yeah,
all have. But I think the
yeah.
majority of what we all have experienced are
I don't
probably
like.
cubensis.
Yeah. That's why I like to mix it with something else, so you don't get the. Yeah, it's like the roller coaster ride. I hate that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so here we're here to talk about drugs in the Bible, and I had sent you a video of my first one I made about Sula Benet and Telerod, and I know you know some stuff about Telerod, and I remember having some discussions with some scholars and them telling me that no, there's zero proof that they used that the word cannabosum, zero proof the word cannabosum means cannabis. Oh, really? Well, what about this evidence at Telerod, though? Oh, that's not, no, that's not linguistic evidence, is what they tell me. Okay, well, seems like she was on to something to me. But anyway, I'll let you, you fill me in on what you know about Telerod. Can we start there?
Yeah, so Tel Aviv is also not the only place that we find drugs in ancient Israel, right? And so I don't want to get into this debate about the Egyptian stele that says that the what was it, 12? I think it was the 1200s, right, BCE. that it was basically the word for Israel, although that's highly contested, and the word for that, not just the city name. Actually, some of them are calling it just a valley. So there is actually decent scholarship for that. I'm not going to get into that, but we have found
Or a
that over the
people.
years,
I heard it was actually a people. It wasn't a place. It was a people. Is
a
what
people
they
in a valley,
thought.
yeah, people in a valley. It might not have been a city. It might have been just a small tribe of people there, is what some of them are thinking.
Nomadic, probably nomadic.
Nomadic, exactly, 100%.
Yeah.
So there, but that's what that scholarship says. So we're not going to get into like if there was an established, kingdom already by that point, but we have a lot of evidence. And we'll talk about what we have. But essentially, they did find opium juglets in ancient Canaanite graves, and this was a Cypriot juglet, and Cypriots were the ones that exported the opium all over the Mediterranean to the Greeks, to the Egyptians, and to the Levant. So the Canaanites, and then I guess you call them proto Israelites. So
Cypriot,
they
does that
were,
mean from Cyprus? Is that from Cyprus then? Is that what Cypriot is?
yes, yep. And the
Okay.
Cypriot culture is about 1,100 years old. So very, very old culture. They're sea dwelling, seafaring people. So they
Yeah.
had a lot of people coming through the islands. When we get into the New Testament, Paul actually, when he took his trip, remember he was trying to go to Asia, and then he said the Holy Spirit directed him back. And that's then when he got into Europe, he actually went through Samothrace and made his way through there. So when that trip happened and he brought that message through those islands into Europe, a lot of those people on Cyprus already knew the story because they already had a dying rising god in Adonis that was already there, and in a garden, by the way. So a lot of those parallels with Jesus and the things that are happening are actually, I found
Well,
them.
it's interesting because to me this is interesting because I have read that the Philistines were likely Greek, right? Probably Minoan because their pottery is very similar to Minoan style pottery, but it's made with like clay from Levant, so they know it was made there, but it's Minoan, and so there's a belief that it was the Greeks that taught the Semitic people how to make the purple in the first place. It was actually comes from Cyprus or Minoan culture, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, and yeah, I would highly say that that's probably true. I mean, and then
I think,
just like
yeah, I think.
tracking the drugs, you have so the site, they were exporting that all over the place, and it wasn't. So when people hear opium, they think, oh, it must have been from Iran or Afghanistan. It was not, and they know this because, like you just said, with the clay, right? They knew the clay from the soil came from the Levant. In this case, with the opium juglets, they had the clay also in the juglets that they traced back to actually Western Europe. And it's funny enough, there was a Western European strain of the poppy. And so they're
All right.
cultivating the Western European strain of it, not one that came in from Iran. And we know this through the soil analysis. So they were trading that and then incorporating it. And even in Isaiah, if you guys search in Isaiah, Isaiah wrote, or whoever wrote the book of Isaiah is probably multiple people, um, that they basically went on this polemic about kicking out those back to Cyprus. And there's verses about them saying, well, they can go run back to their temples and, do their thing over there, but we're not doing that anymore. And that was around there was I think it was a revolt, 612 BCE. There was a revolt and they started writing. And then later on, Isaiah incorporated some of that into his thing where he was like, we're not going to do this pagan stuff anymore. And so they started to separate themselves from kind of the pagan thing. I have some verses we can go over that bring up some of the magic that gets into like the wands and the rods and what those were used for. As we read about Hermes, that he also had a wand and was doing cool things with it. But all of that's practical ritual. And the Canaanites at Gezer. So the funny thing is, you have at Gezer, you have these Christians going there, modern day Christians going, hey, they were sacrificing to Moloch because we found these they look like snake swords and idols to Moloch, and there's dead kids here. So what's in the Bible is true, but they stop there. They don't tell you what they found right next to those dead children at their high place in Gezer. They found these opium Cypriot juglets and two different versions of them. And so they were incorporating it into their ritual. You know,
Yeah.
this is proto Jewish ritual incorporating opium into their divine,
Man.
divination practices for these sacrifices that they were giving up to their polygods, which included Moloch and others.
You know what's so crazy about that? You say that because that shows you how demonized drugs are in our culture, that they'd rather talk about child sacrifice than drugs. Like, isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
Well,
Isn't that
it's like,
crazy?
why do you
Like,
stop there? Oh, because it fits your narrative of exactly what you just said, right? Just demonize everything else, and we're not going to talk about it.
yeah.
Let's point the finger at these weird Canaanites, so it matches our narrative and what we see in the Bible.
So
They
what do
don't
you
go the
think?
full way.
What do you think about the
Exactly.
theory that Moloch is not actually a god, but is actually a type of sacrifice? Is what some scholars think. And
I think
so
that
they,
Moloch was probably brought in from another, they incorporated it probably from another region. I don't think it was theirs. I don't think it started with them. And I think there is some
no, I
lineage
think
there
it
with
was
that.
because, you know why I think this? Because if you look at the Bible, it's all over the Bible. Like even the Abraham and Isaac story, the founding story, right? Or the Jephthah story, like, it's all over the Bible. And
Yeah.
and so I think, yeah, and then they do find archaeological evidence of this, right? Like, so, I mean,
I agree
there's,
with you.
I,
It's all over there, and they did incorporate it, but I don't know if it was theirs to begin with, is what I'm saying.
yeah, hard to say. It's so long ago, though, right? But I mean, that's the thing I love about archaeology. It ruins everybody's good story. Oh wait, we found this in the dirt, and that's why I like about Sula Bennett, like with the story of Sula Bennett, because she hypothesized that the word cannabis meant cannabis. She is what, and then people tried to say, oh, she was just an anthropologist, but actually she was a polyglot. Like she spoke 5 languages. She was an expert in Hebrew, ancient Hebrew. So she wasn't just
Yeah.
some. And so she in the 30s said, this is what I think this word means. And then like literally what 2000, what year did they find that in Tellerrad? It was 2020, I think. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
how many years later, and like, hey, and you
It
know
was,
what, Dan McClellan, right?
Almost 100.
He blocked me on X because I told him this on X. I'm like, hey, I think she was on something.
DuckTales
And
Dan, right?
that's,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what they do, right? Anything that causes them a cognitive dissonance, well, they just shut you down. Like,
Well, here's the thing I don't understand. So like you don't even have to like let's just read the text, and if all they want to do is read the text and interpret it and not include archaeology, there is literally so much in this text. And I'm like, how do you guys, they've all been brainwashed. Literally every single
yeah,
seminary school that they've been to is a brainwashing in the interpretation of what the text is actually saying. And again,
Yeah.
I'm siding with Jevin here. If you don't know the magic or ritual context or how to or read any of that in literature in scholarship and understand it, you're not going to really see it in the Bible. I can tell you because when I first read the Bible myself, I didn't see it. I was more like, hey, I see some drugs here. It's interesting. I think they were using them, but I didn't fully understand the divination rituals, the different necromancy rituals that were going on all throughout the Old Testament and in the New Testament. Like, if you don't see that, then I don't like. I just can't. It's hard for me to have a conversation with somebody because they're just like, oh, they were smoking weed. Haha. Everybody else, we know that because that's exactly what Neil's reaction was. But I had a year and a half. I've been talking to Neil through via Witch Doctor's channel, and at first he didn't want to accept the drug narrative, and then eventually he's like, and then the ARAD paper came out, right? I think it was 2022, something like that, 2021. They find on the altar.
yeah,
Well, the altar had been found for a long time since the 60s, actually, if you track that whole
yeah.
thing. But they
They didn't
finally
have
scraped.
the,
Yeah, they scraped the residue
Mhm.
off of it, and there was two altars. One of them they actually found frankincense and myrrh. The other one, so they were burning that, and that's actually in the Bible recipe, right? But they were telling them in the Old Testament, you have to burn this 24 hours. They have, and so they were. And frankincense and myrrh, if you guys don't know, if you, it's a sedative, a mild sedative, but it does have some effects. And if you're breathing that in all day long, that's what they would use to communicate. So when they're going into the Holy of Holies at ARAD, literally this is where they're finding the altar, and it's basically just a box. It's a room, and it's a small room, and
Yeah.
you get these things
I
fumigating in
call
there.
it
You're basically just
Mhm.
hot boxing in the name of the Lord, right? That's what
absolutely.
they're
And where does Jesus go to be with the
Yeah.
Father?
absolutely
He goes
Chris
to
fumigating.
the Holy
Bennett
of Holies.
writes about it. Chris Bennett
Yeah.
wrote about it. Yeah, in this book I have of his, Green Gold and the Tree of Life, Marijuana and Magic and Religion. He actually shows a picture of the altar. The tall altar on the left held the frankincense. The low altar on the right held the hashish, the heavy
The
concentrate
heavy one, yeah.
hashish. I mean, we're dealing with ancient hashish kings and priests and priestesses that rolled in this. I mean, we evolved, I feel, to have our endocannabinoid system because of these ancient rites that were done all the time. That's just my opinion on
So
it.
I think they believe it was ninth century or something. Is that right? Telerod. And so I kind of did the math a little bit, and I'm no linguist, but like the site kind of predates the Greek word for cannabis, right? So, and this is what I'm like, and I'm not a linguist, but like these people, like someone like a Kip Davis will actually agree with Almond that, because Almond says the word doesn't need cannabis because the Greek says, what does it say? I forget, but it's another plant. It says in the Septuagint, it actually, I can't think of it right now, but anyway, and it's the Hebrew that says the cannabosum, but it actually, that finding, it predates the word for cannabis in Greek. So it could have came from the Scythians. It could have, and they're trading, right? And they're talking. And so probably they're using similar sounding words with different alphabets. It just makes sense to me,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But the linguists, like the Kip Davis, will say there's no evidence. And then Almond says, well, it's Greek, so it can't mean that. So it's funny because they agree on that point in a weird way, even though
Yeah,
they
but again, but we find it on the ground, and so, and then also there's I don't know if you guys know this one. It was in Nature magazine that there was another find of a skeletal remain of what they're estimating, a 14-year-old girl that was pregnant. She was giving birth. This is 4 CE now, so much much longer after. But they were
yeah.
using cannabis and they found THC on her
Yeah,
stomach, so dirt and
I
on her
did
legs.
hear.
So when
I heard. Yeah, I did hear about that one. Yeah, they were using it for pain, probably, right? Like they're
for
trying to treat her
Yeah,
pain,
pain.
that magic
Yeah.
wand tail comes from it actually being a cannabis stick, but that the midwives used. Not
yeah.
even, I mean, could be, as an applicator, could have been just within itself being a fresh one with the juices in it.
Yeah, yeah. And so we find it before, after, in other locations, old, incorporating, from other locations, buying it, bringing it in, purchasing it from the Cypriots. So like for somebody to just say, well, there's no evidence for that. I mean, there's way more evidence than any, like it would be one thing if you just found like one plant somewhere, but if you're finding it in multiple locations for multiple applications, mind you, one was for the
Well,
medical that you just mentioned.
it's not really that they say there's no evidence. They say that there's no evidence for what that word means. Like the word in Hebrew, cannabosum.
Yeah. Yeah,
They
yeah.
say there's no evidence for what it means, right? But
Well, yeah, Sula Bennett, I think, has a really good description of it, though. I mean, the reed,
yeah, I
it's
think
a
so. I think
fumigant.
she's
Yeah,
she's dead on the money, and she was dead on the money like something like, I don't know, 70 years before they discovered the just at Telerod. So
well, they didn't want
to
to
me
give her
that
credit because she's a woman. That's really
they
probably
still
what
don't
it
want
came
to.
down to.
Yeah, well, I think it's partly that, but I think it's also because it's like the Christian narrative is that drugs are bad, drugs are bad, drugs are the devil, right? That's why I stopped going to church, because they told me that drugs were the devil, and I knew that wasn't true.
Yeah,
No,
no,
that's
they
not
knew it
true.
would open you up, and they knew it would get you to
Yeah,
think for yourself,
yeah,
and that they can't
yeah,
have that.
they, maybe, yeah, maybe they demonize it, right, big time. So
Mhm.
if you prove that, oh, by the way, in the
And
Bible it
oh yeah,
says that they
so
were using cannabis,
I'll start
yeah,
out a
that
little
totally
bit
destroys
easy.
their narrative. What's that?
I'll, I'll start out. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry. I think my internet went off real quick. Came back on. All right. So I want to start off just very easy into, anybody can search for these, but this is Genesis 30, 14, 15, 16. And if you guys read this, I mean, I can read it for you all if you want, but it's about the story with where they find mandrakes in the field and what they end up doing with the mandrakes, okay, and how they describe them. And this is in Genesis, so early on.
This
And
is
Reuben went
Rachel
to
and is this Rachel and Rebecca? Is that who this is? And they trade
yeah,
favors for the
exactly. Yeah.
mandrake. Yeah, and it's supposed to be
Yeah.
a what do you call it? Like it's supposed to induce pregnancy, and they think I think is why they want.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead. That's awesome. I did do a. I have a video on that one too. I
Well, it
don't know if
Okay,
also
you've
cool.
seen
brings
it.
sexual desire.
Yeah, there you go. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And in this case, I think they actually were trading it for sex in particular. And
Yeah.
so it says, and Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. And she said unto her, is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? So her husband had passed away. And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. So she's trading the mandrakes in for sex, basically. Um, and that's Genesis 14. And then later on in the Song of Solomon, chapter 7 is insane. I don't know if you guys have ever read Song of Solomon. Chapter 7 is insane. It's literally like whoever and I looked this up, but who's writing the Song of Solomon? They found a little fragment that says the friends of Solomon had wrote that. But if you ask a church, they're going to tell you that Solomon wrote it. But anyways, it's literally this guy, whoever it is, if it's Solomon or not, talking about his own daughter in a very sexual manner and literally talks about mandrakes. So at the end of it, so like he's describing his own daughter. He says, how beautiful are thy feet with shoes, O prince's daughter. The joints of thy thighs are like jewels, the work of the hands of a cunning workman. Thy navel is like a round goblet, which wanteth not liquor. Thy belly is like a heap of wheat set among the lilies. Thy two breasts are like two young roses that are twins. Further and further, he's going on about his own daughter. And down in verse 12, he says, let us get up early into the vineyards. Let us see if the vine flourish, whether the tender grape appear, and to the pomegranates bud forth. There will I give thee my loves. So he's talking about having sex with his own daughter. And then he says,
I didn't
the
realize that
mandrake.
was his daughter. I
It
didn't
was his
like because I
daughter.
knew about. Yeah, wow. Yeah, no, I didn't realize that. I knew about the verse because it's like a aphrodisiac, I think, in the way he's describing it, right? But I didn't realize he's talking about his own daughter. Oh
And
Lord,
the next verse, it says the
it was
mandrakes
a
give a
different
smell.
time, I guess, right? Holy Lord,
Oh
sorry.
gosh, yeah. Even the Christians will like defend that. They're like, yeah, at one
Yeah,
point they told us to populate the earth, so incest was fine.
that's why they called them apologists, right? That's why they called them apologists because they have to apologize for what their Bible says. I'm sorry that. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
So verse 13 is the mandrakes give a smell, and at our gates are all manner of pleasant fruits, new and old, which I give up. I have laid up for thee, O my beloved. So yeah, clearly using mandrakes to entice his own daughter into sex and adventure. I mean, it's pretty like right in your face. So again, like if all they want to do is talk about the text and they don't want to look at the archaeology that shows the cannabis, that shows the opium, then like the text literally says it itself. And obviously they're going to run from that and they're going to say, well, no, that's a metaphor. That's all a metaphor. That wasn't really happening. But again, today, when we go over a lot of this stuff, I'm giving you guys my methodology for my conclusion on all of this. And I'm going to preface this also by saying, let people have fun. Like that's what academia is about. That's what Amon does. He reads things and he gives his opinion on them, right? He gives a conclusion in a theatrical way. Let him do it. Why are people like, well, we don't have evidence for that? He's drawing conclusions. And that's what we do in academia. We don't have 85% of all literature was lost. And we know that most of the PGM style rituals were lost. Why? Because of Augustus ordered them to be burned. 2,000 PGM style scripts and books were actually ordered to actually be burned that we don't have. So Could you imagine having 2,000 other PGM style manuscripts out there and somebody go, that wasn't the religion of the day. That was some weird little group over there doing it. You have to be ridiculous.
Right. Yeah, and
Not
you
only
have
are
to
we
know
finding this,
mandrake. You have to know mandrake specific doses. If not, you'll die to
yeah,
get the result
exactly.
you want. If you don't know that science, you will die.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where the root cutters kind of
Mhm.
came in. They were the ones that were taking the risk, but
Mhm.
also figuring this out and sharing it with
Mhm.
everybody. But they were the ones also
Mhm.
prescribed. And you know who talks about that? One of my favorites is Dioscorides, right? We all love Dioscorides, De Materia Medica. And I'm going to pull up some stuff from there too, actually. Some really cool stuff that he talks about that I haven't seen anybody else bring up. And talking specifically about the
Nice.
mandrakes, and in his opinion, where the mandrakes came from. And it was obviously, we all kind of know that a lot of this came from the farmers, right? We know that the later Silk Road, it was all, a lot of that was early farmers, you know, trading cannabis and other things from the east into the Mediterranean and other areas. But yeah, I kind of want to get into at this point. So we talked about Tellerad, we talked about Scipia juglets. People can look those, just a simple Google search and you'll find those papers. Um, what else can we talk about? We talked about the girl in the 4th century with that. Oh, I can talk about even fill it in with a bunch of Christian stuff first, and then we can get into some of the juicier stuff about the magic and the rituals. But I wrote a piece for a book all about mandrakes and how they were used. And just to your point, Hippocrates wrote medical recipes that included mandrake. He said it was an anesthetic and soporific, and he said it was recommended in small doses in wine. 3 grams or more will cause death, as to your point. So there's a source for that. Theophrastus called for a ritual to remove mandrake from the ground. He says, per quote, it is said that one should draw 3 circles around mandrake with a sword and cut it with one's face toward the west. And at the cutting of the second piece, one shall dance around the planet and say as many things as possible about the mysteries of love. That was pretty interesting. The Egyptians celebrated it in Dendara. They had a festival where they would make mandrake infused beer, and they would have this on September 17th, the Feast of Hathor. The people of Dendara and other parts of Egypt would drink the mandrake beer to the saving of humanity, and that was ordered by Ra. That particular story.
So
We know in the
what
second
kind of
century.
effects do you know? Do you know what kind of effects mandrake actually has?
Well, mandrake is it's basically scopolamine. So
It's what?
it's a hallucinogenic. It's
Oh,
scopolamine.
is it scopolamine? Okay.
Yeah. So if you look up mandrake too, because like people kind of utilize the fruit, some people use the root. The roots are stronger. It has more concentrated scopolamine in it. And you have different people talk about preparations. Hildegard talks about it a little bit when she does her ritual in the 12th century, you know, as a Christian. And if you look at all of her artwork, how could you not conclude that she was doing some sort of hallucinogenic? It's all form constants, and people don't understand form constants. Form constants came out of the research during when LSD was legal from the 60s, 70s. It was legal for 16 years, and some of that research went on form constants. Like when people were on LSD, they saw these geometric patterns, you know, that Greca that you see in Rome and in Greece. And you also see it in Central America, Mesoamerica. You also see it in their artwork as well. A very similar, if not the same style of Greca. And that's just form constants from doing psychedelic plants and mushrooms. And so we know that that's been written about for a long time. And so when people see these patterns in the artwork, like it should tell you something. It's an experience. Even Pasiphae, there's the King Minos, his wife, Pasiphae. People were like, we don't know if she was a real person or not. They actually did an archaeological dig and they found a mural of Pasiphae, and it has all of this psychedelic artwork on it, like literally form constants to a
Nice.
T.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, she was a real person, and she had murals dedicated to her, and she had a lot of this artwork. And she was also fascinated and enthralled with what she called the tricolored dung, or the bull of the Minotaur. And so a lot of these cults, not that we're going to get into that today because that's its own topic, But a lot of these cults back then were actually bovine cults. A lot
Is
of
this
them
not
celebrated.
a not safe for work topic? This one. What was it? The tricolored
Not
what?
safe for work
The
topic.
tricolored what? Oh my lord.
The
Well, the
tricolored
bovine
Yeah.
tongue.
worship goes back to goddess worship because the cow is the only one that has the same gestational period as the human. The woman
Yeah,
carries the
yeah.
baby for the 9 months, and so does the cow. And that's the
There's an
relation there.
Egyptian there's an Egyptian goddess too, right? The cow goddess, isn't it?
Hathor.
Hathor, yeah. That's
Hmm.
it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of
And in
the
We
the
know what
Egyptian.
Bible,
grows within,
what's that?
No,
and
go
we
ahead,
know
Blitz.
what grows on the dung, of course.
I was just gonna say the golden calf story. It demonizes that cow worship, right? That's what the golden calf story does. It takes that
Yes,
other right, and that's
Yeah.
what the Bible
yes.
does in a lot of cases. It demonizes everything around it, whether it be drugs or whether it be deities or whatever, right? And anyway, so yeah, Hawthorne.
So I want to pivot now a little bit to the So I brought up magic and ritual and kind of talk about a little bit of that. But there is some, Greek literature, some really fantastic scholars that have written about magic and made their careers on writing about magic and publishing about magic. And they talk about the rods that are in the Bible as wand, like the staff that's been used, right? And if people really look at, where those come in and what's going on during those verses, they're going to see that it's all basically divination, right? There's a lot of that. But I want to start with Ezekiel 22, 21, 21. And I'm not going to read the verse. You guys can go read it, but I'm just going to give a little synopsis of what's going on in 21:21. The king of Babylon stands at a fork in the road and uses divination, specifically shaking arrows, so that's known as bellomancy, to decide which city to attack. Hosea 4:12 also criticizes Israelites slipping into pagan habits, stating, "My people consult their wooden idol, and their staff informs them." He's literally talking about the magic that they're doing for prophecy, and what to do next. So you guys need to start looking at that aspect in the Bible because it's literally all over it. So I want to get into a couple more of those. But shepherding, obviously they're going to have a staff. Another one is cloak. Jesus also wore a cloak, right? That's very magical, ritualistic. He even a woman touches his cloak and she gets healed from it. How is that not a magical, incantation in itself, right? And so we
Right.
So
haven't
do you
even.
know? Do you know, TigerShark, that the hem of the cloaks were supposed to be the purple or biblical blue, like depending on the process, but the same source, right? The murex shell. So that's what she was grabbing onto, was that hem that was made from the murex excretions, right? I find that really interesting.
Yeah, and also you mentioned hem because not all of the cloaks had them, but as a Jewish man, he would have had them, right? Because there
Yeah,
was
exactly.
theirs
Yeah,
had different. So that's a good.
yeah.
So it sounds like you guys understand that and have looked it up before, but it's literally all over the place. Like Exodus 14:16, raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water, so that the Israelites could go through the sea on the dry ground. Like basically, this is literally Moses using the staff to part the sea, right? How is that not a
Oh,
magical
Blitz,
incantation?
you're statically. Hold on a minute, Tiger. Blitz, you're statically. There we go. Sorry.
Numbers
Okay, go.
17:8. The next day, Moses entered the tent of the covenant and saw Aaron's staff, which represented the tribe of Levi. And if you guys look up, if you go back in like these Bible search things and look up rod, they literally give out in the 12 tribes, they're giving each one of the head of their tribes a rod. And this rod is probably being used for divination purposes, right? There's only one given, and the head of that tribe has it. And what are they doing with it? They tell you the context. In Numbers 17:8, the next day Moses entered the tent in the covenant and saw Aaron's staff, which represented the tribe of Levi, which one of the rods was given to him, had not only sprouted, but had budded, blossomed, and produced almonds. So this is how they're deciding who's going to be the most holy to lead the group essentially during that time. 2 Kings 4:29-31. Elisha, this one's crazy. said to Gehazi, tuck your cloak into your belt, take my staff in your hand and run. Lay my staff on the boy's face. This is necromancy, right? In 2 Kings 4:29-31, the context is that the prophet Elisha attempts to use his staff as a remote conduit of miraculous energy to resurrect a dead child by sending his servant ahead to lay it on the boy's face. Though it is in this specific narrative, the miracle requires Elisha to eventually come and pray in person. So again, they're doing these ritualistic practices all over the Bible. And I'll say this. Well, before I knew anything about this and going through the PGM and the Stockholm Papyrus and all these other magical texts, I didn't read the Bible from this narrative. I just saw the drugs in there and was like, there's something going on. They're using this like normal people are using it today to reach this divinity. They're doing way much more than just that, right? They're doing different rituals. In some cases, they're substituting things in for certain things that they don't have them. That's another big topic of discussion that we're going to clear up today, because we have all these people fighting. Jeff, you know this. People are fighting. Blitz, you know this about what burning purple was. It was probably many things. It wasn't just one thing. It depended on the region that they were at, and their substitution in these rituals. It doesn't have to be exactly the murex. If they can't get it, there are other plants that they can substitute in for that they can get and try to use. And some of them are not psychoactive at all. All right. And we'll talk about a good example. Hildegard is a good example.
So it's interesting. It's interesting you say that. So the murex shell is also one of the ingredients of the holy incense. The shell, I think they call it onyx or something in the Hebrew. And so did it have a psychoactive effect, or was it just like a placebo effect even? Like, who knows, right? But it was all over yeah. And there's also a verse in the Bible.
Yeah, we can look at that recipe. Yeah, there is a verse in the Bible for the recipe. There is a recipe because it says literally 1 part to 1 part, but it's like frankincense, myrrh, and that one, I forget the name of it. It starts with an O for sure, but yes, it's a seashell basically, and it's added with the murex. Now, what the murex does is a sedative. It's a sedative. It's based on the bromide chemistry that actually interacts with the GABA receptor. So it is really there. There is a good paper on it, actually, I can send you guys. I don't have it in front of me, but it's somebody did their, I think 2018, something like that. They did some work on like what the murex would actually interact with internally, like the bromides in the body, in the brain. And I think what they came out with is it's a light sedative, essentially. So sedative mixed with these other compounds.
I think I read that years ago. Yeah. That bromine is very, very familiar to me.
And it makes sense because the murex has a venom that it injects into its prey, right? So it makes sense that it would be a sedative, right? It only makes sense, right? Like,
absolutely.
And then the way that Almond says it's administered is through the eyes, which is in the ancient times how you would have to do it. You'd have to use a mucous membrane to administer a drug. So again, it only makes sense. Like scientifically, it actually makes perfect sense. But they deny.
Yeah, and there's PGM rituals where they're doing it with the eyes, you know. So I mean, he doesn't, you know, people say, well, Almond's not saying. They blast Almond like Neil and Myth Vision and Cross Bible. They go, well, he's not giving us the sources, and the sources in his books are not very clear. Or, you know, we can't find them when we're looking. It's like, okay, there's a lot of scholarship on all of that, and literally, it's in the PGM, it's in the PDM, also another magical papyrus. It's in the Stockholm Papyrus, and so like Almond's just making the conclusion based off of him reading the text. He doesn't have to cite these other people. He's just making the same conclusion they are. So, like, he doesn't really have to.
He's not allowed to have that opinion to himself. Wow, it's like a personal opinion, but he's not allowed to have it. And why is he not allowed to have it? Everybody else is, right?
So the PGM is what is it? The Greek magical papyri, right? What's the PDM? Yep. I'm not. What's the PDM? I'm not familiar with that one.
I don't know what it stands for, but it's another magical papyri that's just like the PGM. It has very similar rituals in it.
From the same area, like the PGM. Egypt, I think, is where they found it, right?
Yes. Well, it's so the PGM is a mix of Greek and Egyptian, right? So a lot of that they're mixing together. It's not just
Oh,
and
so it's a
Coptic
bunch
archaeology
of
too.
little like the Bible. It's
Yeah.
not just one story, or it's not one source. It's multiple sources, basically.
Yes, and this is exactly why I think that.
Demonic
Well,
Raptor
yeah,
Seer said PDM demonic.
What is
demoted.
it?
Yeah. Or what is it? Yeah, demoted. Um, So yeah, anyways, well, I don't want to riff on that. People can look that up, and there's other sources. There is others like the Stockholm Papyrus, and you guys can look that up. But the unfortunate part is that Augustus destroyed 2,000 of them. He ordered the destruction of over 2,000 very similar texts. So when people say like only a fringe group or there was only a couple Gnostic groups that were doing this, absolutely false. They saw it as a huge threat to the political system, which is why they ordered it to be destroyed and burned. They also, obviously, we know the libraries that were destroyed, burned down, and so in Alexandria. So all of that leading to different changes and people losing basically their religion overnight in many cases.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the
there you
only
go.
reason we even have a lot of this is because of things they found in the dirt, right?
Demonic.
Like because someone managed to hide it or whatever, and then now we have it. That's why we have evidence. Yeah, because they tried to destroy it all, right?
Yeah, yeah, and others actually after Augustus also had ordered the destruction of similar texts. So if just imagine if you had, I don't know how many Bibles that would equate to, 2,000 other papyri. It could be 80 different Bibles on top of it, and somebody to sit there and go, well, that was only a fringe group that was doing that. Absolutely not. It was the religion of the region. Period. I mean, you wouldn't have that many texts. Um, if it wasn't, if it wasn't far spread, widespread, and sharing and syncretic, of them sharing ideas and pushing different narratives and adding it to their own pantheon, it just wouldn't exist. So I want to get back into a little bit of the magic stuff and how we can read it. But in Genesis 49:10, the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from being between his feet until he to whom it belongs shall come. So it's all over. I mean, even in, we can go talk about Revelation. Obviously it's there with the rod.
Oh,
So rod,
definitely.
staff, very similar context that they're using it in. Um, that we have to read the Bible when we see these verses as such. I don't think there's any other way to read it. I think if somebody thinks that a rod is just something they use to bludgeon somebody, is ridiculous. But I think that's probably how a lot of these people are reading this. They just think they're using it to like beat people into submission or something, but it's
So,
it's clearly a
Book of
magical concept.
Revelations is a huge initiation rite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Maddie.
Yeah, you know
Um,
what? I remember when I was a kid, right? And you know how Moses' staff eats the other magicians' staffs, right? And I remember like because, magic is also very much demonized by Christianity. And I remember asking my mom, like, but that don't make sense. Why is Moses is practicing magic too? Like, right? Even as a kid, I could see like, wait a minute, that don't make any sense what you're telling
yeah,
me. And then she's had
there's a
some crazy
rabbi.
excuse. I forget what the crazy excuse was. Sorry, go ahead.
There's a rabbi, I think, from one of the universities in Israel. I think in 2008 he came out and he went on like public news channels and he said like literally the Old Testament is one big trip. He's like the burning bush and all that stuff in Moses. He's like they were definitely doing something. And like of course everybody just like lambasted this guy, but he was like the chair for like the psychology department, I want to say, or sociology department at one of the universities. Maybe it was Tel Aviv or something like that. I forget which university, but you guys can look that up. 2008, I think he came out as a professor, chair of this department, and that was his conclusion. He's a Jew, right? He made this conclusion as a Jewish man. So, I mean, it's not unheard of that some people are actually finding this text to be that. I mean, when we read like things like Deuteronomy 18:10-11, it says, "Let no one be found among you practices divination or conjure, interprets omen, practice sorcery." So, like, why would they be saying that? Obviously, if they weren't doing it, it was everywhere. It was fully widespread all around them, and they were trying to break away from it because they didn't
Absolutely.
want. Imagine, like Jevram said, perfectly, you said before, if people were doing this on their own and doing it at home and doing rituals and magic and idol worship at their own house and going into the muse and doing Vox and all that other stuff on their own, they wouldn't need a church. They wouldn't need a hierarchy. They wouldn't need anybody else to do that. And so they were really fighting that from a political standpoint, that they wanted to take control, that they didn't want people to do this on their own. And they literally saw it as a threat, which is why they're starting to incorporate. And in my opinion, they did definitely utilize the drugs. Obviously, we found them utilizing them. But in my opinion, they were also utilizing it to form hierarchy. This is why also, Jevum, we can get into this a little bit, but I believe that this is why they were telling women not to speak, is that they didn't want the women to start utilizing this in a more free fashion that they were doing it as before. And so they really wanted to quell that. And the way that they saw fit was, hey, don't let them do it. They can't do it. And then they just said, you know what, we're going to not let anybody do it. And it has to come through our priesthood, and only we can do it. And only we have the authority. And so everybody has to bow down to us. And we're the only ones that can go in there and interact with God in the Holy of Holies and get stoned. But if they do it, as Jevon says, then they might not need us. They might realize they don't need us anymore. Right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
So the whole
absolutely.
Yeah.
power and control of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You know what?
absolutely. To keep the women from being able to congregate. And I think that the patriarchy at that time knew that the women were the vessels of divine and had a closer connection naturally. Um, and oftentimes don't even need the drugs to communicate and to get, what is now called the downloads, right? That intuition and that knowledge of spell work. Like I've done spell work and I've just went with it and had great results from it, and never written it down and never read it from anybody else. So I think that's a close connection right there.
Yeah, and the women were the healers, right? Like they were the ones that knew the medicine, the nature, like the natural medicines, and then who were they burning at the stake? It was the women, right? But I say that my favorite part of the Bible is where the curtain rips between the Holy of Holies, and essentially it's a powerful political statement because it's saying we're giving you access to God, right? And even no matter what, whoever wrote Mark, he was making a powerful political statement. Whether Jesus was a real guy or not, it don't matter. But then Christianity took it, flipped it on its head, and then demonized everything. And now you have to again go to us for access to God, right? You got to learn Latin. You can't read the Bible unless you then know the Latin or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and people don't understand that only 3% they estimate only 3% of the population back then could read. So not only could you not go to the temple and be part of that priesthood, you couldn't even read it. So you had to go listen to somebody else read it for you.
Talk about interpretation, everything left up to interpretation for that, I guess, that certain cult leader. Depending on that cult leader is the interpretation that you receive, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
So
Yep.
people call me a loon, of course, but I say that the same thing is happening with science in a way because it's becoming the new dogma. Oh, you're not a
Yes.
scientist. You can't speak because you're not a scientist. Well, I can read. I
Yeah.
don't need to be a scientist to be able to read or whatever, right? But it's like it's almost the same. It's becoming the new religion, I think, in some ways. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. And the science, actually, I mean, we can riff on this a little bit. I'll take a couple minutes to riff on it because I have a big so I have a NASA funded graduate degree, if you guys don't know that, on
you have a
meteorites
which?
and fulgurites. NASA funded graduate degree. So my graduate
Wow.
program was actually
Oh, I didn't
funded
know
via
that.
NASA, and it was a
Wow.
research assistantship. It wasn't I wasn't like a grading papers or anything like that. I was paid from NASA to actually do research. Um,
And what
but
was what was the degree in again?
it was
It
in
was in
a biogenesis with meteorites and fulgurites.
oh wow.
Yeah, so it was a lot of geochemical analysis and things of that nature. But
Oh now I know why you're such a wealth of knowledge. Wow. That's cool. I did not know that.
so
No, didn't.
well, I don't really wear it on my
That's cool.
sleeve or
No, but
brag,
I
but
mean,
I
yeah,
did.
whatever. Yeah, totally. But it means something. Like I'm just a hillbilly that's interested in this stuff. I have an electronics technologist diploma. That's it. 2 year.
Nice.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But and I
I
love
mean,
talking to people like you who have like because you're few and far between. Like people that just have the brains, the knowledge, and willing to share it too. So
well, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the compliments. But on your science point, I 100% agree. As going through science and using it, right, and being around it and being a part of it for a big part of my life. The when we really track back as to what science really is, it comes out of two things: induction and deduction. And that comes out of Greek thinking, right? So people are always like, well, you got to give Aristotle credit for science because he had, inductive reasoning, which is inductive. Induction is basically if I do a scientific test where, like, let's say I take a shovel and hit a bucket of water, I know that that water is going to splash. And if I do it 1,000 times, I know in the 1,001st time, the probability says that it's going to splash. So really, in that thinking, it's just probability theory, right? But we see that broken in many times, and we see explanations for things that we don't know. The Big Bang Theory, as we all know, is one of those miracles, right? It just like give us one miracle from the scientists, and we can explain everything, and they can't. And now James Webb Telescope that's out there is proving that a lot of these theories were wrong, just because we're gathering more data that just suggests otherwise. And so, yeah, science is really kind of held back. Like, if you ask science, for example, to explain, like, if I just saw a picture of Jevum in a room and I said, hey, science, somebody in science, just watching Jevum, just observe her, can you tell me how she's feeling? Or can you tell me how she loves somebody? Like, science isn't going to have an answer for that. It never will, right? It can't explain that person's individual connection to what she's got going on, the people that she's interacting with, the people that she's in love with, the people she's not in love with, right? Her emotions. They can't really explain Jevum to a T. All it can tell you is Jevum is sitting in a room. She looks like this. She either looks happy or doesn't look happy. It's like very rudimentary, right? And so that whole Aristotelian induction and deductive thinking, where it's like, well, it's a consensus and people think that this is real. That's literally the same thing as religion is operating off of. Absolutely,
yeah,
100%. And that,
you know what? Isn't that the limitation with artificial intelligence? Is just what you're saying because it's just rudimentary science induction, and it can't think. It cannot think. So it can only give you the consensus. And sometimes the consensus is very, very wrong, especially depending on who's paying to put the consensus out there, right? So AI,
Oh,
I, th- I,
yeah.
I find it, do you understand what I'm saying? Like during the whole COVID thing, the Reuters was known to be the biggest, like the most reliable news place in the world. Well, guess what? The CEO of Reuters sat on the board of director of Pfizer. So tell me that's not a conflict of interest. Now, so this is where you're getting your news. This is where you're getting your consensus. And this is what AI uses to draw a conclusion. So it can be complete garbage, depending garbage in equals garbage out, right?
yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
100%. I mean, people just really need to look at this and think about it, because I honestly, when I see atheism, like, I'm not an atheist, right? And actually atheists kind of irk me a little bit because they think they know it all. Like, they want to attack Christianity, and I get it. Go ahead, do your thing. But like when they go, well, we know the end, I'm like, then you're no different, because you're really no different than a Christian, because you're saying that there's nothing. They're like, nothing exists. So like when you're dead, you're just dead. And it's like, but how do you know that? And then you tap into that and you're like, do you know everything? And they go, well, we know the universe, and I have a physics degree and I try to explain it this way. I'm like, yeah, but that's not, you don't know that for a fact, right? And the same Russell's teapot applies to them that they're using against the Christians. So I would say that people really need to get more comfortable with saying, I don't know, and being okay with the I don't know answer, right? And if you want to follow a God, follow a God. If you want to be, follow a polygon, do your thing, right? But don't come around and bash Christians but also be the same person using the same argument of saying, well, I know the teleology, which is I have an end. I know the end. And I think that's kind of pointless. I think if we're all purveyors of the mystery, which I find myself trying to be, we don't have an answer to the mystery is the mystery. It's not something to be solved. Leave it the fuck alone.
Yeah. It's different for everybody too, just like an initiation. It's an initiation. It's very personal. It's very personalized. The
Yeah.
beings on other realms, they see us far more than we see them. And going through the mystery, we get a chance to partake and interact with them. But it is to elevate us, it is to help us in some way, or lead us straight to madness, which in itself is a mystery.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And I think that's all I try to do is just try to I don't try to say this is the fucking answer and everybody has to follow this or bash Christianity and like say I know everything. But I think we see a lot of that today, unfortunately, on YouTube, right, with the atheism. And I feel like there's a lot of hurt Christians. At the end of the day, I think that Neil is one of those people. Myth Vision is one of those people. They got baptized into the church. They were evangelicals, and then they complained about how they were lied to, and so they're angry, and so they want to attack it, and they want to get people on, and they want to debate nonstop. It's like, stop the debates, just have a discussion. We can all openly discuss the evidence and the data.
Yeah. They're fighting,
Yeah,
right? They have
for sure.
internal conflict, and it is exuding outwardly, by going and looking for heated debates all the time and having to be right all the time and prove the other wrong all the time. That's just constant conflict that comes from deep within.
Yeah,
I,
exactly. And I
I,
think,
I I agree. I agree with you 100%. More people need to say, I don't know, and be okay with
Yeah.
saying that. 100%.
Yeah.
Because everybody, yeah. That's what I identify as, is that I identify as agnostic because I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I know what I believe, but that changes too, right? Every time I hear more evidence or something or whatever, that affects what I believe. But a lot of people aren't able to do that, like, because they're so locked into what they believe that they will deny evidence that is to the contrary, like physical evidence right in front of their face, and I'll be like, dude, it's crazy. It's crazy. Like, isn't that
yeah,
almost
exactly.
like, yeah, more people need to learn to say, I don't know. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm there with you. And I think part of the mystery is, like Jevim said, like, I don't think we're ever gonna really know, but it's more or less have those deep intuitions and that tap into your intuition to begin with. Unfortunately, society and culture that we live in, they think that just is a thing for women, and I'm like, are you ridiculous? Like, instinct, intuition, learn those two things, learn how you can be a part of that with nature, and those experiences that I'm sure that both of you have had, all of those in your chat have had, that brings you to this, you know it's like a divine feeling. It's like you're tapped in with the universe, and you don't even feel like you're yourself. You just feel like you're a part of everything. You're flowing with
Yeah.
everything at that moment, and you can't just recreate that overnight. You can't, but there's
No.
different ways. And obviously the ancients tried to, because they were doing the ritual, right? They got to that point and they said, hey, let's make a ritual about it. And I think the early rituals were pure, and they were open, and they weren't this, mechanism for control or power, or hierarchy at the end of the day. But I think it turned into that.
Yeah, it sure did. There was a time when
Absolutely.
I sat down breathing and then realizing that, the ground and I were breathing at the same time. It was the same breath, you know, and the comments are amazing. M. Watson said, you are allowing the eternal present and then being in the ever present. And Pamela said, most of human time, you are just dead without. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You just walk around existing. So we've kind of been robbed for how many years with these substances being illegal or kept from us or only kept for a certain special few. The most of humanity has been robbed of these beautiful experiences, these knowing of self and others. And I'm glad that there is a renaissance, a psychedelic renaissance happening. That is a hallelujah to me.
Well,
Yeah,
even in
yeah. No,
modern times, there's still like, because there was a study. Do you know about the study TigerShark, where they studied MDMA and like how it could actually help with depression, and there was a lot of evidence to support it. And then someone, so the fella that had donated a lot of money to do, he was a rich fella, right? And his family was mad that he was donating all this money. So then they did a smear campaign on the guy that was doing the study on MDMA, and they used one. There was one case, something happened, and they, do you know about this?
yeah, yeah, definitely neuroplasticity in the brain for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
and
helps
then
grow the neuroplasticity, absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, I know that like microdosing like mushrooms can help with depression, and DMT can help with depression, and these things are starting to become known. And like you say, it is good that it's, but there's still a lot of forces that are pushing against it.
Yeah, and it's universal. So, like, I'll just take a sidebar to talk about other cultures outside of the Western culture. But there's, we saw it a lot, like in Peru, for example, where they're doing DMT yopo cults, where they're sniffing it, snuffing DMT, and they created a hierarchy. And
Uh oh. He's pinging.
let's see,
Make a
can you guys
buzz.
hear me?
You're glitching.
Yeah, it's breaking up a bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. While
Must.
he's getting back online, I want to address that, Magdalena. It has shown to do amazing things for veterans that are suffering from CPTSD. By leaps and bounds, it's helping. So
Yeah.
I feel like we've been intentionally made sick
Hmm.
by them keeping these plant remedies, I'll say remedy, medicines from us.
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
no
the
profit in there's
microdose
no
is
profit
helping.
in healing people because you want return customers. Any business wants
Mhm.
return customers. There's no profit in healing people.
Right. It's horrible. The things that could be
Yeah.
done to make the world so much better that isn't allowed to get out and reach the public or made illegal.
Sorry, guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yay,
All
it's
right,
back.
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, my internet. I don't know what's up with that. But anyways, I wanted to take a sidebar to talk about other cultures where that literally the same stuff was going on. But there DMT cults in Peru that they found this mixing yopo with an MAO inhibitor, BCAPI basically. Got them into that state, and then they made a priesthood out of it. Um, so that was a thing there, and just basically you're not allowing other people to do it, patriarchy happening, telling, male dominated system. So we see a lot of this going on in other cultures and not just over there. Obviously a bigger, grander scale going on there. And then also with the different ritual probably being more mature, obviously in the Western cultures. But I would say highly recommend, like, there's a lot of research. If you guys want to like Google search it or make AI go look for it for you, on LSD research that backs up Blitz's stuff. There's even psilocybin research that I really like from like guys like Roland Fisher, where he was like he was doing a placebo, but also giving some psilocybin cubensis to people, putting them in a room, and he had this like this thing that would have two bars that were not fully parallel, and he gave people like a red button, and he said, "Hey, when they go fully parallel, hit the red button." And out of the two groups, who do you think could see that being parallel better? Obviously, it was the people on psilocybin cubensis, psilocybe. So, yeah, there's really good research out there.
Wow.
LSD studies, Goff is another one. You have,
Mhm.
I love guys like Michael Harner. He wrote fantastic books about um, indigenous theogenic use, hallucinogenic use. He was the one that accused the West of being not only ethnocentric, but also cognicentric. When you guys listen to people talk about consciousness, but they completely ignore altered states of consciousness, they're not going to understand it. Much like the Bible, if they're not reading it in this ritualistic magic context, they're not going to understand it. And so you have guys like Michael Harner that talk about that and gets into the transformative effects of these substances. There's a lot of literature on other cultures also using it as a hunting mechanism or also using it as a psychosomatic for ailments. But as Jeva mentioned, there's also the abortifacient side of it where the females were the one probably encountering this early on because that childbirth and death was gruesome back then. I mean, they estimated up to 25% of all women died during childbirth back then. And so, of course, the medicines they would be very in tune with. I mean, a good example of that is pennyroyal. You know, they ancient
Yes.
Greek writers talk about pennyroyal, but it's a very toxic compound. You definitely would trip off of it. There's actually people in the states that have in the 60s and 70s, and doctors have written about it. They had women do it to have an abortion because they themselves read about it. They had concentrated extract oils that they took, and they hallucinated. They talked about their experiencing being high. One of the women actually did die from overdosing on it, and so this isn't like a traditional drug that people are going to do for Party City, right? This is something that only the women knew about because they used it as an abortion medicine um,
Mhm.
during the childbirth and child labors and pains. And so,
Oral
we have to look at.
tradition.
Yeah, go
A
ahead.
lot of these were oral traditions that were just taught. You were just raised up in it, so you just knew it in your
Yeah,
culture.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what they had to work with. And in other regions, it was different plants, it was different seeds. The betel nut was also used in a very similar way in Asia. There was different seeds that were used in the Middle East for the heart shaped seed. I forget the name of it at the moment, but they're chewing on that would cause different outcomes as well. And then men would pick this up and learn about it, and they would utilize it in a different fashion. Obviously, they're not the ones that are going to go through that experience, but I would say out of the various range of different plants that were available that could be utilized in a hallucinogenic state, I would it's well known and documented that women had the bigger range of things to their availability to experience these divination things. Um, so I think that's
Well,
why
the
they
men
stamped
were
out
the
women.
hunters, so they had to go out, be still, be quiet, and then once you seen the target, you had to move fast, quick, in a hurry. While the women were
Yes.
traditionally the ones out testing the plants to see what did what, just like our ancient ancestors in the chimpanzee and gorilla families. So, and that you'll see that when they'll find a new shrub or something, first they'll just listen to Terrence McKenna say this. They'll stick it in their mouth and they'll wait 30 seconds and then they'll chew it and then they'll wait before they swallow and they'll swallow and wait. And if it's not causing an upset, well, then we can eat it, right? Or if it makes us, if it makes us horny, if it makes us urinate, defecate, if it helps a runny nose, like trial and error. That's just how we've learned as a species.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's okay, so I'm gonna get to the crux of all this, of what I was
Yes.
talking about, and bring it back together for everybody. But there's two verses that I want to, two different lines that I want to go down in the Bible, and one of them is tracing how they're calling God basically a root cutter, And when Amen talks about this, definitely the data is there to support it. But one of the actions that, let me find it. I have a whole thing here, but I'll pull it up. He has them doing, see, yes, wormwood in the bitters. So it's my topic on woodworm, and we could find a bunch of verses with woodworm in it, and they're describing it being this very bitter drink. But in Exodus 15:23 through 25, the Israelites cannot drink the water at Marah because it is bitter. God shows Moses a specific piece of wood or tree. When Moses throws it into the water becomes sweet. Conversely, in Revelation, a star named Wormwood, Apicinos, falls into the waters, making them bitter and toxic. So just like he himself is doing this magic, and giving it to the people. And it's like I don't know how people miss this or interpret it, and they just think all of this is just a weird metaphor. Like I don't get how people just translate this as a metaphor. It makes no sense.
No. And wormwood is a anti-parasitic. So when you detox from parasites, you go through a flu-like Herxheimer reaction, but afterwards you get high. You feel high. Your body gets euphoric
Isn't
after
that what
massive
isn't that what absinthe is made from? Isn't that what absinthe is made from? Absinthe?
Yes.
The
Yes.
drink? Warm.
absinthe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absinthe. Yeah. Wormwood.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep.
Right there in the Bible. Nice.
Oh, you guys want to hear? Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it up with this other crazy one. So it goes back to Jesus, and in Mark 14, and then in other verses of the other books, right, that they're not all consistent about. Which is why another thing, I don't think any of this shit is real. But when Jesus in Mark 14 early on, when he makes Judas Iscariot mad, and the other disciples get mad, but Mary, and funny enough, Jevem, a woman, right, is the one that anoints him with her hair, right? 300 denarii worth of nard. Now, do you guys know what nard is?
Spikenard.
So,
Oh yeah.
But spikenard, but they had to get it from the east in the Himalayas. So when when Romans and Greeks talk about this luxury item, and we know that Jesus wasn't poor, why? Because his friends weren't poor. Lazarus, for crying out loud, had a big compound, and he had a big dedicated stone funeral burial mound for himself, his own burial grave site, right? Obviously, he wasn't a poor dude. Mary also wasn't a poor person. And so when they had this 300 denarii, now, do you guys know how much a denarii is? It's basically the wages of one regular worker for a year. So full labor for a year for one person is 300 denarii. That's how much that spikenard cost. A little bit amount of concentrated spikenard on you will give you good effects. He put the whole alabastron of it on his body, literally. In I believe in Mark, it was on the feet that she anointed him, but I believe in the other books, it was directly on the head. So if you guys look up, like, what side effects do you get from spikenard, and especially in that amount?
I don't know in that amount. I know I put it in an ointment and it will heal bruises within 24 hours. It will heal up wounds that maybe should have stitches in it. I mix it with holly chrism and lavender and with ghee, and it is absolutely magical. Absolutely magical. So in large quantities, oh, I don't even know.
So what would you say, TigerShark? What would I don't know either, but
so in Mark 14:4 is funny because the disciples' reaction. The disciples were indignant. They asked the exact same question: why this waste? This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor. Judas correctly calculated the value of the jar at roughly 300 denarii. In the first century Roman economy, 1 denarius was the standard daily wage of a common agricultural laborer or a Roman soldier. The financial loss, Judas, watching someone break open an unbroken alabaster jar of imported Himalayan oil was the equivalent of watching someone take an entire year's salary and literally pour it onto the floor. And then, of course, he had a defense, where Jesus replied, because they were kind of mad at Mary for doing it. And then Jesus replied, "Leave her alone." Jesus replied, "It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me." That was in John 12:7-8. What a selfish guy. That's your God. What a selfish guy. Pour the whole thing on yourself. But the effects of it, so to your point, spikenard oil, the effects of it: intense sedation and GABA activation. So the mechanism is chemical compounds act directly on the brain's central nervous system by interacting with the GABA system. Receptors effectively mimicking or enhancing the body's natural calming neurotransmitters. Analoxic, so anti-anxiety and grounding effects. Neuroprotective and micro anesthetic effects via the skin. And it basically, at that amount, you would have olfactory overload, which is going to cause a lot of the symptoms that he himself had. And honestly, there was a bunch of scholars that wrote about it. So like, if you're looking at this and going, "Oh, I'm seeing this and this is what's making sense," well, other scholars saw it too. And they wrote about the same thing and the symptoms that they saw him on the cross with. Like, he couldn't even carry the cross, right? So one of the disciples had to carry it for him. Well, why was that? Well, you just poured 300 denarii spikenard on your head. You're not going to be in the right state of mind on something that heavy. I don't think any of us have ever done any amount that close to amount of that sort of thing. But I know if you did, you definitely wouldn't be feeling good.
No,
So it
and
could
it's a
cause,
very, very strong, pungent oil. Like I get it in 2 dram size, which is about that much, and it just takes a half of a standard drop in a
yeah.
full ointment. It's very pungent and strong.
Yeah, and it says here. So I was looking at the medical, like, okay, if you overdose on this stuff, what would happen? It says sudden drop in blood pressure, so you'd experience hypotension, respiratory distress, and problems with breathing, and bronchospasms by the volatile chemical overload created in in your oxygen. You'd be struggling for oxygen. The numbing of the feet. So if you put it on your feet, you'd have very numb feet, essentially, which is probably why you couldn't carry the cross. Um, the mental fog and lethargy so he have the mental fog that he's basically exhibiting there. And there's other scholars that wrote about this, so if you guys want to go look up, hey, who's the source that wrote about something like that, definitely out there you'll find it. They all can kind of argue with what's going on in the text there, but
Yeah.
not something unheard of. So I think at the end of the day, like, if they're really doing these substances, that's how we have to incorporate them, and then obviously into the ritual context. Now, not that we're going to get into like other other things, but when people attack almond for quote unquote calling the Neoniskos younger, I'm not coming at it from a literary context. I'm coming at it from a ritual context. And we all know that in the PGM, the ritual was using a virgin boy, and other authors have written on this same topic. Plenty of them.
Yes.
And so they
Yes.
also link the pais, which, if you guys don't know pais, why they were used in a sexual manner, because the pais in was it Matthew with the Roman centurion, people go, whoa, that's kind of weird. Why is that in here? Because in a Greek Roman audience, they would know what a pais is. It's a slave, basically a slave that's helping us as a servant to a Roman centurion. Well, the Roman soldiers were outlawed from having sexual relationships for a period of time, and it was very well known that they would have sex with their pais. That was a known thing, and not only that, in Matthew, he's got an attraction and affection for him. So when scholars read that, they go, "That's very strange." Basically, what we're seeing is that centurion is going out of his way to help his pais, because he went and asked Jesus to heal him, right? And he did. And so why would the centurion do that? very strange. Probably a lot of scholars are
Oh
saying,
yeah.
well, it's probably a real sexual relationship that was happening between the two, because otherwise that doesn't make
Yeah.
really a lot of sense. And
So
so
you
there's a
No.
lot of
know about the Spartans, I'm sure, right? And it was common that they would start at 7 years old, right? The apprentices or whatever, right? So
yeah.
so this is a question I had. Like, okay, so if Jesus was in the garden with a young boy, would they have even cared back in the day? Because it was going on everywhere back then. Like that was pretty common, and it wasn't even.
Yeah,
Would they
and
have
people don't
even
have to
been up?
agree with it. I mean, people
No,
can
it's
say
not
that
like you're
this
saying
wasn't
that's
happening, but
okay. You're just saying, hey, this is what the text is saying. This is what the evidence is. This is what was really going on back then.
Mhm.
We're not
yep.
saying it's okay. We're not saying we support it or think it's great. Like what was, hey, Jevon, what's that dude's name? The Gnostic dude that called me a pedophile supporter because I told him ominous, because this dude said
Oh,
ominous saying. Yeah, what's his
The
name?
Gnostic priest in Australia.
Yeah,
He
that dude.
runs a Gnostic church. Yeah, he's in Australia.
Yeah, I told him because he said that Almond said people were he was that the Bible says Jesus was drinking their spinal fluid, and I'm like, dude, if you want to debunk him, at least know what he's saying. And then he tells me that I'm a pedophile supporter. Like, whoa, that escalated quickly. Like I was just saying, hey,
Yeah.
it's not what. Yeah, because it's very
Nobody
triggering. I
Nobody is
think.
supporting
Hmm.
that in this conversation. And what we're saying is that if this was made for a Greco-Roman audience, this is exactly how they would see it and interpret it, because pederasty was built into their culture.
Yeah, this is
All of
normal.
the they literally made a mythological story about Achilles being in a pederastic relationship. And why did they do that? If you trace it back, the city states were trying to do population control, so they were supporting these
Hmm.
type of relationships, and it's been written about. So like people can debate it all they want, but it's funny to me because like guys like Neil and all this that say that like none of this is happening, like literally this was happening all over the Greek arena, and all of his favorite philosophers that he brings up from the Greek pantheon and mythos, they all write about it. Literally all of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So
I don't understand. I want to look at Neil, especially, and say, look, it's okay that your G spot is up your anus. Men's G spots are up their anus, and it's okay. And, it's the child stuff that's not okay, but it was common. Gayness was common, and it was okay. It was not so separate from culture like it has been like my whole known life.
Yeah,
yeah.
like when you
And why
look
do you
at it
think
from
they
a modern lens, it looks very different. When you look at it from our lens, like it looks very different, right? But how it would have looked back then is completely different because they were it was a completely different world than what it is, what we have today, right? And
Hmm.
Yeah, and what
you know the
and why would they try to outlaw it? Why would Paul tell the church, the pagans, that you can't? Well, because that was part of their culture. It was normal for them.
yeah, you don't outlaw someone unless somebody's doing it, right? You don't make a law against something that nobody's doing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's in that
So I
area,
mean,
Marcel. Marcel said, I think they found out recently the male G spot actually isn't in the butt. I was like, well, it's in that area.
He's in denial. He's in denial.
I just know where I can find it. Okay, y'all. So that's all I know. That's my conclusion of the thesis.
Trust the
yeah.
science,
So
right?
um,
Yeah.
I say so.
Trial
There,
and
so
error.
we have all that source. Oh yeah, Hildegard. So I wanted to bring that up because some people like take this the wrong way, and I think there's a big disconnect between people like Neil saying that's not burning purple. There's no reference for burning purple anywhere. It's like, dude, chill out, because various cultures were using dyes, like the base vest that they found, and they did the research, and they're finding opium and other things in there. Um, had Egyptian blue in it. So this idea of putting dyes into the ritual divination cup was common, and it was not the same in every location. And to Bliss's point, Murex was fucking expensive. Tyrian purple to produce was very expensive. So for common people to use it, they had to use an alternative. One of the ones that I talked about that I brought up on his channel was the one that Pliny the Elder noted, that it was literally indigo, but when you burned it, it actually burned purple. And so they were using that as a dye and additive, and it was also a sedative as well. And so, and also Syrian rue was used as well in the Roman arena for a red type of a dye, and they were mixing them together for different crimsons and different colors. And the Syrian rue, which you all know is an MAOI, very, very powerful. So for people just to deny that and think that it was always just one thing is ridiculous. But where we find it in text is Hildegard reference on her Mandrake portion when she's getting into like the weird, crazy ritual aspect of it that she has. And I'll read this to you because it's basically talking about preparing the mandrakes in a different way, in a very ritualistic setting. You know, like for example, she says that you have to basically brush it over the body for 3 days. Then you have to hold one part tight over each groin for 3 days and 3 nights, but also let them pulverize the left hand of this same image, add a little camphor to this powder. So they're doing like this very ritualistic setting. And she also says if you don't have it, so if you don't have mandrake, you can substitute in beech tree. So clearly a non-psychoactive plant, but you can still do the ritual, right? And so to Jevam's point, it's not always about having the substances either. It's just really doing the ritualistic process, the methodology to it, to go through it, and people were accustomed to it. So if you can't get something, they're still going to do it and practice it. So that's through the literature. That's just not Hildegard. Hildegard's late. We all know that. But even late, they were doing it. So Dioscorides,
they're even talking about it in modern pop culture. The Fellini movies, the Satyricon is about, the warrior and his boy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Snappy, for that one.
Yeah, I haven't heard that source, but yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, it literally is all over the place. I wanted to bring up a cool.
So to deny it would basically be to, at this point, to deny your ancestors, where you came from, and basically ancient humanity, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree with that. I wanted to bring up a part of the Dioscorides De Materia Medica, and I have it open in front of me, and I have to find the portion where he talks about this. But essentially, he's talking about the Mandragoria, the mandrake, and how it's being used. But I think in the portion when he starts talking about it, he's talking about where, like, who started using it first, and he brings up the shepherd. The shepherds were the ones that use it, and I'm like, that's very interesting. So the shepherds were the one that introduced it to the world. But don't they call Jesus like the good shepherd? So do you think Jesus is doing magic? I mean, clearly, right? I mean, he's got the cloak. Paul is doing the same thing with the handkerchief and the idol.
The hook that comes with the shepherd's hook, that goes back to ancient Egyptian.
Yes, exactly, yes. So they're all walking around like most of the staff.
Who visited Jesus again? Oh, the Magi, wasn't it?
The Magi. Well, so I don't know if you guys know the story of the Magi, but it's an 8th Syrian Coptic text that talks about the revelation of the Magi, and it's basically a ritual. So for 1,000 years, the Magi were practicing this, accompanied with astrology, following stars, going on a mountain, doing these rituals, and then they came down with this star food, they called it, and they give it to people in this story, in this 8th century Syrian Coptic text, Revelation of the Magi. And they are converting people to Christianity via the star food. Like, how is this not seen for what it's written about. How could you just say
Wow.
that's a weird metaphor, right? Like it makes no
Well,
sense.
because once you get on the substance, it doesn't matter what the programming is, it will stick. Okay. If you get on a substance and watch the never ending story, that's going to become part of your reality and your personality.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's how they controlled us, programming us
So
that way.
what's the name? What's the name of that text? I would really like to check that. I need to check
Uh,
that out. And what
the
is the star
revelation.
food?
So they don't really say. I mean, people have had different hypotheses on star food. Um,
The
and
revelation
I'll
of the
tell you,
Magi. Yeah, that's what you said. Okay.
yeah,
All
revelation
right.
of
Right.
that.
I'm gonna,
But I'll tell you,
okay.
it's an eighth Syrian Coptic text. You can find it on Wiki. I know Wiki has it, but then you can just download the book. So Soma, like one that I was reading recently, and I've read it before, but if you go back to like the Soma recipe that they talk about in the Rig Veda, and even outside of the Rig Veda, they talk about them using Soma for divination purposes. Even going so far that to say that the divination wouldn't happen if they weren't doing it. And at some point, they changed from an internal a divination experience to an external. So they were doing yoga and chanting and things of that nature, oxygen deprivation by the breathing. But that wasn't what they were doing first. They were doing substances, the soma juice. And one of the things in the soma juice, which is why I have to agree with Wasson on this, and well, not really, well, Wasson, yes, but Allegro, is that I do think it was the Amanita muscaria because they added it to milk. And I believe they even specified fermented milk. But anybody that has taken Amanita knows that 90% of the what is it, the abiotic acid can be transposed in mescamol, converted to mescamol via fermentation, which is better than boiling it in water, even though it is soluble in water. It's better to ferment it. So if Soma was the original fermented drink that they were using by using fermented milk, adding something to it, it would only make sense that it was this Amanita strain because not everything else is uh, having the need to be fermented for that purpose. That's a really good theory. I couldn't see any other substance needing that, whether it's, scopolamine or datura or Syrian rue or any of these others. Like that makes no sense to me. So to know that they were probably doing it with the Amanita makes a lot of perfect sense. So we have to kind of look at the little droppings
Mhm.
that we have and kind of link it together with what would make sense for something like that. Um, and I think that that's probably what's going on there. I don't know what the Magi were using in particular, but again, I think they were probably using a bunch of things, uh, not just one thing. And I think getting into this argument about what burning purple is, or what is it, Chalkian fire, or whatever the hell they're talking about in these myths, and ambrosia and theriac, even though we know some of the recipes, right? They're not all the same. I mean, read the different theriac formula; they're not the same, right? So just to say that they're all like, well, he said theriac, so well, I have a source that says it's this, and I have that's a dumb way to even have a conversation. It's just to say, look, theriac wasn't all the same. Over here it was different. Over there it was different, but they were doing something, right? And that's kind of the point of
Mhm.
our discussion.
There's I
Absolutely.
forget I forget who it was. It was a Roman emperor or something, and or a king back then, and he used a theriac to make himself immune to snake venom because he was worried someone was going to try to kill him. That's why he did it, and it actually did work. Like it made him immune. And what really fascinates me is like when Alman talks about the theriac and like being immune to the dip sauce, right? The science actually checks out because that's how they make antivenoms today is they inject horses with little bits of venom and then they harvest the antibodies. So yeah, the science totally checks out. And that's what's like, whoa, like and that comes from Galen is what I understand. Like that's where he kind of got all that.
No, it doesn't come from. So Galen,
No?
Galen was all about using the skin, and that it was wrong. But not to blast Galen, he wasn't right on that. He didn't use and at least that I don't know. Maybe I'm completely out of my shits because I'm listening to the mainstream people. And maybe Amon has sources that say he was using the viper venom, and maybe he was. But yes, the viper venom is the one that that was definitely being utilized in that fashion and added. But I think early on, Galen was writing about the skin, the viper skin. I don't know if that worked. For my research, I don't think the viper skin was the one that was
It
working, but maybe
doesn't
he did add the venom. I don't know.
it doesn't make sense that it would work, and I did read that as well. But there are a lot of untranslated Galen texts, though, still, right? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing too is
So
Galen, like,
maybe he's reading
a
some of
cool.
these texts that.
You guys want to hear some cool shit? So you guys want to talk about gladiator stuff? Holy cow! So we all love the gladiatorial games. Not just us, but mainstream people love it too. And they all go, well, where did they get their courage to fight? They just had, like, there's crazy studies that they found, where they're finding the ash in their bones, and they're drinking ash liquid with basically water, vinegar, and it's calcium. It's a source of calcium to heal the bones, fractured bones of gladiators. But they also found henbane uh, in their system as well, and then they also found opium. So when people go, what were they fueled by? How come they couldn't feel the cuts, and why did they kept fighting? That's why, because they're fueled by the drug. And that whole gladiatorial system was fueled by slavery. It was slave trade into it. So they're using drugs plus slavery to control the mass population with these games that they would put on via the emperor. And it's all throughout society. I mean, we still have mimics of that today, where NFL football or basketball, they're trading people. They're buying, selling, trading individual people.
Right.
The pharmaceutical companies are a hierarchy that controls the drug, even in society today, which is why I think that I wouldn't say, I don't know if this is 100% like a Christian thing, but maybe I think a lot of people would point fingers at Christianity for the foundations of this system, which is why if somebody would actually have a real debate with somebody like Andrew Wilson that's all about this Christian nationalism narrative, and let's just go with it. Okay, we do live in a Christian nationalist nation in America, and that's part of the problem, is that these same things that people want to say and cherry pick, like Neil. Well, Aristotle tried to, he brought science, and then this other guy said, Seneca said he doesn't like slavery. Well, that doesn't really do much compared to what was going on the ground. And how did that transition into Christianity, and how was that brought over here into America, into the current system that we all have, which is probably why we have a lot of people that are oppressed, and they don't feel like they have empower. They're not empowered. They're not motivated. They feel like anything that they do end up doing good for themselves just gets squashed by this overarching narrative of, well, you either get with our program or you're worthless, or this meritocracy thing where if you're not in the Christian nationalist narrative, then you're not worth anything in this system. But a lot of that goes back into these terrible cultural things that were happening back then, that still exist today, and they're still paraded today, unfortunately. I know that we're finally making some breakthrough on some of these substances becoming legal finally. Like, you see the videos in Colorado where they're actually growing these huge monster psilocybin mushrooms, which are cool. So they're doing that now from a psychosomatic treatment viewpoint. And it's going to be cool to see a lot of the blue states, because we all know that the red states aren't going to be doing anything like this anytime soon. But it's going to
Yeah,
be nice to
I've
see
got to
cities
get
and
out of
states do it.
Tennessee. Yeah, Tennessee is horrible.
Hey,
It's horrible.
I have a question that's a little bit out in left field, but it's still related to what we're talking about. Do you know anything about berserkers?
Yes. Yes, they
Yeah.
were all on a
So
headband, man.
henbane. Yeah, I know. That's what I
Well,
was
Yeah.
they
thinking
were
about
probably
when
on
you.
um it starts with the R. I can't think of the name. It starts rhodiola. I know. Well, the Vikings use the rhodiola, and it's like a really good herb for
Is that
stamina.
a flower?
It
Is
is
that
a
a flower?
flower, but it's
Oh,
mainly the root of the rhodiola.
yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
of that. Is it? It's kind of more like I forget what yeah, they were saying it was more like a opium or more or less like a caffeine or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is a stimulant. It is a stimulant, and if you take too much of it, you could blow your heart out. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
Yes,
definitely the
believe
berserkers
it.
were using it. So we
Mhm.
found a bone with a bunch of like 300 some odd seeds in it, in being traded up north. But they also found,
I
and I don't know if
can't
you've
just say
seen this
that.
one lately, Blitz, that they found. Oh, they're also talking about them using amanita as well, actually. Um, and that wouldn't be surprising if they were. I should bring that
I
up
have a
actually.
little bit.
Um, I want to read
Yeah.
this to you guys and get your opinion on what you think this is. But it's from the Bible. So here's the description in Exodus 16, right? Just listen to this. Just listen to this and tell me what you think what do you think it is? So the manna from heaven, as described in Exodus 16, manna is described as a tiny flake-like substance, white like coriander seed, that appeared on the ground in the morning dew. If left out in the sun, it would melt. If kept overnight, it would breed worms and stink. So that's the only description for it. But a lot of people, you kind of make like John Allegro, for example, sacred mushroom and the cross. This was his argument for why this description was a. What do you guys think it is?
Mushroom.
Yeah,
It's fungus.
it sounds like
Mushroom?
sounds like a fungus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is.
So I just don't know how people can't like see that, or they just don't want to admit that. I mean, it's just very ridiculous as to why. And then
I
it's
think
it's in all the Christian iconography as well.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
like
ancient there's ancient churches in the middle of France that have, the mushroom depiction that was left, I feel like, 'cause nothing is by accident or happenstance, left on purpose for this time, for this type of awakening, for people to be able to see that our ancestors were drug fiends, a lot of them. And I mean,
and
how
I don't think they would have seen it as anything wrong back then. It was like because it's only recently that it's been demonized, like fairly recently, right? Like within the last couple, like whatever, 300 years. I don't know, not really sure, but and I think that has a lot to do with greed and money. And like if you make something black market, it makes it worth a lot more money instantly, right? And
Mhm.
the same year that they made pot illegal is the same year that they made booze legal. So, the mob still needed something to sell. And, you know, that's pretty harmless and like, it's very good. And I always said the second they make it legal, it ain't going to be worth anything and they still haven't made it legal. They still have to control it. Because why? Because they just
Yeah.
got to control the price.
Yeah.
You got to keep it a commodity, right?
Yeah, but there's
Well, it's
literally
kind of
thousands
like,
of.
I was going to say,
Go
it's
ahead, Troy.
like the whole new age movement since COVID, that it's become popular to not be Christian, to be pagan, and they have flooded the market with, tarot decks and just everything. When you do that, it devalues it, even though it makes it more acceptable and mainstream. And I know that through reading Chris Bennett's books that our ancestors honored these plant substances. They seen them as having their own consciousness. And I think that that's where we need to get back as a whole before these plants are going to give us everything we're supposed to have. And no, there has to be great honor and reverence to them. So for
Yeah,
them, like
yeah.
cannabis is now like mainstream. We've lost a lot of that sacredness of cannabis because it's become mainstream.
So where you guys are at, can I ask, is it legal where you guys are at now?
Yeah, the
Cannabis, I mean?
THCA, but now they're trying to take it away from us. But tomorrow's supposed to be the deadline. It's supposed to be illegal. these hillbillies ain't going to stand for it. I mean, they've been running moonshine and cannabis grow since the beginning, so I'm not worried
Yeah.
about it.
No, I was just
So it
curious. Like it's like completely legal here now, right? And only it's still very controlled because you're only allowed to grow 4 plants. That's all you're allowed. Like so they still are controlling it,
yes,
right?
they are.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
So
ridiculous. How are you going to have a
what about
law to plant?
what about in Texas? What about in Texas?
So now you can't. They just made it this year illegal to get flour. You can still get like the liquid edible, like the gummies and like the drinks, but that's it.
Yeah.
Oh
Um,
yeah, really?
so
That's because of big
yeah, it's even
alcohol.
more. They went back on it, which is really really
Wow.
insane.
So they're
But
pretty strict. They're pretty strict. But it's
they
a pretty
they even tried to outlaw some indigenous plants, that some indigenous psychoactive plants, which failed. Because there was a bunch of people that like went down there and like, what do you talk, like you're trying to have a war on plants now? And so that my thing is, it's a part of my religion actually, and I don't know if you guys know this, but I am Native American. I have been a part of the Native American church for God knows how long, 20 something years. And we are actually fully capable of having these substances, medicine, sacraments, if you will, legally. In the state of Texas, I have to present my Native American, blood quantum records essentially with my church card, and I'm fine. I can't sell it. I can't give it to people. But if I ever was found with it, it's not a big deal. I can't have synthetic stuff. I can't have like LSD or anything. But as long as it's like natural plant stuff, there's nothing they can do about it. So, but with that, there's literally thousands of plants that are legal and that people need to learn about. I know Jevem, talked about a couple today. There's a whole list of things out there in the planet that they have not made illegal that are available to people, and they need to learn about them and try to utilize them to their practice. If you're taking like a pain medication because you have severe pain, there are definitely alternatives that help. If you have
mhm.
issues with sleep, there are natural alternatives that can totally help you. A decent quantity of valerian root, wild lettuce is one of my favorite. That's very similar to opium in effects. Completely legal. You can buy it from tinctures off of Etsy for $15. It's not expensive. It helps you sleep. If you have any pain, you can use it for pain medication. You don't get addicted to it. It's not anything like that. So
Wild lettuce. I don't have to look into
wild
that.
lettuce, yeah.
Yeah. I use
Yeah,
a
and the
lot of white willow
natural.
bark, and there's some black cherry. Oh, what's the name of it? Jack Black Cherry. I'll think of it. Not
But it's the
Laurel.
natural cures. They don't have side effects like the pharmaceuticals. They always have side effects. And then
Right.
pharmaceutical company, no problem. We got a pill for that too. Next thing you know, you're taking a handful of pills for all these side effects. I've seen it happen. It happened to
Right.
my wife. It literally happened to my wife. And then her
Mm.
spleen was swelled up because her spleen is trying to like take all the toxins out of her body, and it swelled up. And then finally, a doctor walked in and said, well, maybe we need to take her off all this stuff and see what happens. Thank goodness. But
Mm.
the root of the cause was Celebrex, which is made by Pfizer. They're a repeat offender.
Yes, they
Yeah,
are. Yes,
there's
they
a class
are.
action lawsuit for that drug as well. But that's what happens with these unnatural cures is it causes you all kinds of side effects, and then they'll try to treat
Yeah,
that
and they
and
know it.
etc. It's yeah, but the
I wanted to show
natural.
you. I want to show you that Ethan Russo, MD, wrote the Handbook of Psychotropic Herbs. Most of these are legal and easily found in the U.S.
Well, I see the passion
Most.
flower on there. Yeah, that passion
Oh
flower is an
yeah,
MAOI too. Yep, that's a good
yeah.
one.
I do passion flower every night mixed with chamomile, some dried cannabis stalk. I used to do root, but I use it sparingly because the root is really, really good for like hardcore pain, like childbirth. I use the white willow and damiana, and it's really, really nice to get a good night's sleep.
Nice. Yeah, it
Absolutely.
sounds
Yeah.
good. Yep. MAOIs are good for that. You know, Kava Kava's out there, our friend of the channel, Chase, he owns a Kava Kava bar. So there's a lot of these different alternatives. I saw somebody mention early on not San Pedro, they mentioned peyote. Not my church.
Mm,
So I'm part of the
yeah.
ONAC, Agawea Native American Church, but the regular Native American Church, the NAC, not the ONAC, their whole legality is around the peyote. And so Quinnital Parker, back in like 1905 or something like that, was doing an interview. He was kind of the leader, and the Native American guy, and they asked him like, "Why do you do this?" And he was like, "Well, you guys go to church to talk about Jesus." He goes, "When I go to my teepee, I talk to Jesus." So
Shoot that.
big difference.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Big
And
difference in the
another way to get
divination.
there, another way to get there is through sweat lodges, with fasting and just being very strict with your practice. You can get there not as close. And I think substances will take you to different areas, of these other realms too. But the sweat lodges, I mean, it's like a major purifying, a cleansing that you cannot really put your finger on either, but you just feel it, it's in your pores. So it's amazing. I wanted to tell Tammy said lemon balm is very beneficial for sleep and anxiety. Sweet Melissa is like one of the most expensive essential oils that you can purchase. And it's because, like rose, they're little itty bitty flowers, and it takes a fuck ton of them to make just a drop of oil. Like it takes 40 whole roses to make one drop of rose oil, right? So that's why it's so expensive. But if you can afford the essential oils of these plants and use with caution, don't just half step it. um, they will give you more immediate, stronger relief.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot. I share what I can with people and try to tell them how to do preparations and things like that too. So any questions we get, I'm always happy to help. In the future, probably write some little handbook on it. But frankincense and myrrh is an awesome, awesome experience. If you guys haven't done it, I have tinctures of
Mm-hmm.
it, so I don't really
Oh
fumigate
no.
it. Fumigating is awesome too. I've done it before, but it's very smoky. So if you ever do it, and it smells great, I like the smell of it. If you do it in your
Mm-hmm.
house, it's going to be very smoky. So do it outside. You can use a glass, capture the smoke and then just inhale it. But it's like a very mind expansive experience where I can see why they were kind of like chilling in that smoke all day long, because you get really grounded, and you feel your mind is more mind expansive. So you think of like bigger thoughts. Instead of like when I would compare it against weed, where weeds are just like drilling into things and you want to type stuff and you want to research and type and think about things, which is cool too. But I prefer the more I like the other side of that. So you get this more expansive thought process, grounding effect, anti-anxiety effect, if you will, very chill effect. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of things out there. Don't limit yourself
Oh,
and don't feel
what do
like
you
there's not
do?
something else
What do you
out
do
there.
with the tincture? Tincture? Do you consume it like orally then? Do tincture?
Yeah, yeah. So I tincture it in high alcohol and then I just pull it off, and you can put like 1 cc, 1 milliliter, you can put in some lemonade and just drink it. And I mix
What
the
does it
two
taste like?
together. And
Does it taste
I
okay or is it
so
terrible?
frankincense so frankincense is weird because you can actually chew frankincense as a gum, and they actually do it in
Mm-hmm.
over there where they harvest it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually is good for your teeth, but it's a mild sedative on its own. But when you mix it with myrrh, that's kind of where the magic happens, I feel. um and so you get the real effects, I would say, from it, where you get this like mind on high, like I would say on a higher dose of it, your scalp will feel tingly, your brain like feels tingly, which is cool. But I would also say, because like if you're listening to music or just vibing on it, like your brain feels drippy. Like it feels really, I don't know, it's cool. It doesn't hurt you, it doesn't, make you addicted to it or anything. But it's just a really
It's
interesting
very
experience.
healing.
It's healing.
It's
Yeah, it's very healing.
extremely healing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Paula
And what
has
did
a
the what?
question about. I was gonna say Paula has a question about Roger who makes maps. She's asked twice if you know or if you know Roger, and he makes maps.
I don't know, Roger.
Yes,
So
yes,
it
I've
was
always been impressed with his knowledge.
so the Magi brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh, right? So you
Yeah,
just need
I think they.
you just need ears to hear, right?
Yeah, and there's people that make up these weird theories about that too, because they go, well, they just inserted the Magi in there because the Magi were well respected, and so they wanted to make it seem like Christianity was international, because it was like the Magi were coming from afar, and they're like, oh yeah, we believe in Jesus, we love him. Some people think that that Jesus was a product of the Magi, and the Magi were bringing it to kind of um, interject with the politics of the day. So there's different theories out there. I don't really care to get into the weeds, and I'm not somebody that's like, this is what's happening. I'm more or less somebody that's like, this is what people are talking about, and these are possibilities, right? And things that people think was
Mm,
going on. But I'm not somebody that's like 100%. This is what this is. I
Yeah.
think if
No.
anything we can pull from these stories is not to repeat some of this stuff. Use the medicine in a sacred, safe space, right?
Yeah.
And try to just have your own peace and calm and understanding of what was going on, and hopefully not subscribe to that, because obviously a lot of that was dirty, nasty stuff that nobody should really be a part of. um, and so I think if we read it from that context, I'm not going to blast all of it, but I think if we read it from that context, read it from what was happening in the area, the other culture, religions, the practices, the divination, the magic, the medicine, that you can draw your own conclusions. And I hope the big one would be, let's not repeat that, right? And if you feel like you were cheated, if you felt like you were grown up and indoctrinated into this thing, well, you're not alone. Unfortunately, I wasn't. I would say, thankful that I was not part of that in my life. I was not somebody that had to like deconvert or was a part of that circle in the early days, but I sympathize with those that were. I see that could totally impact somebody in a very negative way if they go their whole life and then they go, "Oh, I was just lied to for 30 years of my life, and I was going to church every Sunday, and what could I have done if I wasn't doing this, and why did I support somebody like that?" I could
mhm.
see how that would not be an easy thing to handle, right? And so, um, which is good for these groups because we can talk about it. I'm sure some people in these groups have been there, right? And we can try to help them along and give them some tips and tricks and things to try to get past it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like I
it's hard
mean,
learning. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, but
I was just gonna say I find it a little annoying when people have like come to some realization that that's not true, and now they are literally calling other people stupid for what they used to believe. Like, I mean, you used to believe that too. So it's a little
yeah,
judgy to like, I used to believe in Santa Claus too, and you know what? It was a nice thing. My parents weren't trying to harm me by making me think Santa Claus was real. They
yeah,
were trying to give me a nice memory for Christmas, whatever, right? So I don't begrudge people still for still believing in the
yeah,
fairy tale because I used to too. So hey, and you're gonna if you're grown up and you're raised that way and you're told this is what you should believe. It's a very rare person that is not that is gonna wake up and go, wait a minute, that's not what it that's not really
right.
what it says at all. But most people are just like, it's more comfortable to just believe what I was told and don't question the narrative. And it's like, but what bothers me is the way they use the narrative to like, demonize other cultures, go over and bomb and take their land, and this is what they're doing, like, and that's
Yeah,
really
it's a
what
very
really
strong
woke me
trigger.
nuts with.
Yeah, they even found
Yes, the
Epstein. Epstein was
Zoroastrianism
using
was
drugs,
big
right?
with yeah. The
Zoroastrianism big with
Magi
the
was
Magi.
yeah, they were intertwined, very closely related. And it's
Yeah, the
you
Magi
gotta
were
think about
basically the sages.
yeah.
They were
The
Zoroastrian. Is that what they were?
Well,
Yeah,
they were from the same area.
Zoroastrianism was big with the Magi, weren't they? Yes, Raven. Hmm.
Hmm.
It's platonic, I think it's saying. What we're dealing with is very strong egregores, right? Like Santa Claus. You brought That's what brought that to mind. Is Santa Claus is an egregore, and
What's
it's
an
probably one of
egregore?
the most powerful egregores of our time because you have all these children putting all this, yeah, and it's all through our mainstream culture, like Monsters Inc. I look at it as loosh, right? So Monsters Inc. is siphoning energy off of children, and I call it loosh. So is it's positive energy siphoning off of children to dream and think of Santa Claus while brainwashing them and making them act a certain way, or you don't get your presents and you don't want to be on the naughty list, right? And the same with God. It's an egregore.
What's an
Yeah.
egregore?
It's
What does that
done.
mean?
Egregore is a thought form of energy that actually has sustenance on the astral that causes things to happen that carry over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Like I think that I always compare Santa Claus to Jesus because like Saint Nicholas was an actual real guy, right? We know this. He's a real bishop in Turkey, and he actually used to give coal to the kids, and it was actually a nice thing. It wasn't actually a punishment. It was, oh, now you can heat your home for the winter, right? It was like, and then all these other cultural metaphors or whatever get put onto him. And this is what I think Jesus is too. Like he's like maybe it was a real guy. Something happened, probably. And then all these like different like myths, whatnot. Dionysus, you can see the influence. You can see all these different mythological influences on the Jesus story. So
Yeah, and I would say it doesn't even matter. So like you got people that argue
yeah,
about it all the time and they switch camps. They're, oh, I'm a mythicist, but I'm not a myth, it doesn't matter. Like I'm just there's not a lot of strong evidence, but let's just go with he was alive. It doesn't really matter. I mean, the people on the ground were practicing it whether he was a real person or not. Just like all these other gods,
yeah, for
maybe not
sure.
all of them. Maybe the turtle god of the volcano isn't real, right? But they were still doing something. And so that's kind of what we're looking at and studying. And how does that impact society and the control and how people feel today? I mean, our society, my society, or our society here in the U.S., my age group, the millennial group. I mean, we're not inheriting a better planet than our parents. A lot of them don't have a lot of opportunity. A lot of them are never probably ever going to own a house unless they inherit it from their parent. And a lot of them are fed up with society and they don't want to be a part of it. They're turning off. They don't want to work even. And I think a lot of that is because of this control mechanism. Like imagine being a kid and you grow up and they're like, you live in a small town. There's not much to do. Either you go to university or you go work in the paper box, factory down the road. And they go, well, what if I don't want to do either of those things? So where do you put these people? Right? Is it wrong for them to say, I don't want to do this? Well, society, they make culture look at you like you're useless, lazy, but it's like, well, maybe they just don't want to do that. Right. And what about these apologetic people? So the ones that are closer to it, right? That are like, I'm going to defend it. When did Jesus ever tell you to defend him? End of discussion. If I ever
Right.
had a debate with an apologist, that would be my first question to him, and hopefully the last. Where in the Bible? And I would keep asking the question until they answered me. I would just say, where in the Bible does Jesus ever tell you to defend him? He never says it. He says, follow me. He never says to defend me.
Hmm.
So this whole apologetic rap is just some bullshit that they concocted later on so that they could feel more merit in that system, in the hierarchy. Well, I'm defending God. See, I'm better. I'm more moral. I'm going to get to
Hmm.
heaven, and it's just this whole control mechanism where people they feel lesser. They don't feel like if they're not doing apologetics, they feel bad on themselves. And then they take it into like, oh, well, I was, masturbating to pornography when I was 16. And it's like, well, who wasn't? It's called hormones, you know? That doesn't make you a bad person. That's just a
makes
normal
you
biological
makes you
function.
human. Yeah, it makes
Yeah,
you
just
human.
makes you human.
But
But they try to
it's
make,
been
they try to guilt you into that even.
yeah. That's true, true. And then it's but like you
Coloring.
say, it's a
There you
control mechanism.
go. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I had a really good time, guys. Thanks all the people in the chat, but I do have to run soon because I have to start some barbecue for the family.
Yeah, for
All
sure. Yeah,
right.
I bet this is. I'm gonna watch it again to soak up some more of that knowledge because we covered a lot of ground here, and I'm really glad you came on with us.
That was fun.
Yeah, thanks for
Definitely.
having me, guys. Thanks everybody in the chat. Have a good night. Talk to you later.
Yeah,
All
talk to you
right. Good
later.
night, everybody. Oh, happy full moon, too, before we go. Happy blue moon, full moon. Absolutely. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye. Talk to you later.